Hi everyone, this is a short screencast for Independent Colleges Dublin for SEMA E2 for November 2014. And in this particular screencast, we're just going to cover the basics of corporate governance should this come up. Now, what we're asked to do is to analyze the issues facing X company, the CG issues facing X company. And really, this is the only way that I think the SEMA E2 examiner can come at this area. In other words, he's going to give you a scenario with a series of problems, very much a list, and you're just going to have to draw out the various items that are of concern from a CG perspective. This first paragraph here, what we start off by finding out is that, as per usual, this company is a family business, and it's very much a case of family members controlling the board and controlling what the company does. They're reluctant to make external appointments. Therefore, the balance of the board is slightly out of sync. Second paragraph just moves on from that point and says that there are only 2 non-executive directors. Do remember that for a listed company, it's a requirement to have a full board of non-executive directors, for example, on the audit committee. In addition to that, we see that they're very much from similar backgrounds. Therefore, there's a lack of diversity. Okay. Next paragraph here, we have a particular issue that's of concern to the company, but that's not being dealt with particularly well with regard to contamination. Okay, and it just happens that this contamination issue hasn't been or isn't being properly dealt with in the board meetings. The papers have been omitted. Okay. Now, last point here, we have an issue with regard to the executive chairman and him wanting the shareholders to simply trust him, given that the performance of the company has been good so far. So there's an element of sort of control being exerted by the chairman, simply based on perhaps short-term results. Okay, so in terms of the answer, what we'll see within the answer, again, we always start with some form of definition, and you'll see that that's what they do. Try and keep this short, though. We know that CG, or corporate governance, is simply the way that companies are directed and controlled. And why is it in place? Well, several reasons. I mean, the purpose really is to enhance performance, or to improve the performance of companies, generally speaking, but it's also to guard against failure and indeed corporate scandals. The other thing that you need to mention in your first paragraph here is perhaps just the UK Corporate Governance Code, which obviously is principles based as opposed to rules based, like the American SOX version. Okay, so simple intro paragraph with a definition, a little bit of background, try and mention scandals or failures, and certainly the series of reports that have led up to the most recent UK Corporate Governance Code, which was in 2010. Okay, now, as I've said, these questions are very much about just being able to decipher from the body of the scenario what the problems are. And with a 10 marker, I'd expect you'd be coming up with at least 6 or 7 points, maybe even more than that. So try and get the points down quickly. You'll see that in their answer, they've simply listed and put a paragraph or 2 under each of the listed points. So first, most obvious point really here is in relation to the NEDs. Now, we need NEDs because they're going to give us some independence, and they're going to make the board more effective and give it a better balance. If we're really stuck with family members, they obviously are going to try and dominate, but they may not have the right sorts of skills. Okay. Second point, very, very similar. The board positions, or indeed the appointments, are very much based on family connections. And ideally, from a CG perspective, we would have some form of nominations committee that would obviously include some NEDs, and that would give perhaps a little bit more balance in terms of who is being appointed, and indeed when they're being appointed. What we're looking to do is obviously to get the right people in the right positions, and simply appointing from family is not necessarily going to do that. Again, linked into that is, if we are bringing in non-family members, what we're going to get is some sort of element of diversity of opinion and indeed of expertise. By doing that, we'll increase the level of debate rather than reduce it, which is what is happening in this particular case. Next point, sort of information, and that really ties into something that you'll see in a lot of these CG questions. Something's missing or something's going on. Perhaps there's an irregularity of some kind. And in this particular case, there certainly is in relation to this contamination issue. That's a core area for them. It's a core problem, and it's something that needs to be discussed, and it isn't being. So therefore, there's an issue with really sort of administration and indeed a good quality information. Okay. Next point, again, something that you see fairly regularly. I'd expect this phrase to be used within a CG question: internal control, or indeed a lack of internal control. If you think about what CG is, it's about really businesses running effectively and efficiently. If we don't have internal controls, that's unlikely to be happening. So in this particular case, there was a need to really mention the fact that internal controls are important. Obviously, they help the company run effectively. Shareholders will want a sound system. If it's not there, there's going to be a problem. Okay. Obviously, the impact upon the board's ability is evidenced by what we've just said in the above paragraph. Okay. Next point. Relations with shareholders. The shareholders own the business, so full and indeed transparent information is required. The more information, the better. And it looks as if in this particular case there's been a certain level of breakdown in the level of communication, particularly if something like the contamination issue is not being openly discussed and dealt with. Okay, so that's a very, very quick run through corporate governance. Just in terms of a summary, I'd expect your first paragraph, perhaps if this comes up, to be some sort of definition. We've got to mention direction and control. We've got to mention scandals, or indeed very briefly the history of CG, and that really stems from the sort of early 90s in the Mirror Group, and there have been a series of corporate scandals since then, as we all know. Over and above that, perhaps a quick mention of the UK Corporate Governance Code would help us. The latest version is 2010. And I think the word principles-based, or the phrase principles-based, as regards the tenets of the UK Code compared to, let's say, the Sarbanes-Oxley Act would help us also. Just one other final point, obviously, that being principles-based, we're expected to sort of comply with the principles. If we don't comply with them, then obviously companies need to explain why in their annual report. So there's a quick summary on this area. Hopefully that's helpful, and good luck with your studies.